The sulfur seas of Pyra 9 boiled beneath the crimson light of the gas giant Helios. Commander Mira Tal stood at the observation deck of Outpost Delta, her silhouette stark against the apocalyptic landscape. Scarred fingers traced the edge of her combat visor, a nervous habit from 15 years of frontier duty. "Commander," the voice behind her was soft, almost apologetic for interrupting her solitude. Mira didn't turn. "Dr. Wu, bit late for your research rounds, isn't it?" Dr. Jonas Wu stepped beside her, his lanky frame dwarfed by her battle-hardened presence. Unlike most scientists assigned to this hellscape, he didn't shrink from the military personnel. Something about his quiet confidence had always intrigued her. "The neural patterns in the indigenous bacteria show fascinating adaptations during the pre-firestorm conditions," he said, eyes fixed on the churning horizon where lightning forked through copper-colored clouds. "I wanted to check the readings personally." A smile tugged at the corner of Mira's mouth. "Most people run from firestorms. You chase them. Most people haven't seen what I've seen in those patterns." Jonas turned to her, his dark eyes reflecting the volcanic glow. "Beauty in chaos, Commander, like your tactics during the Vega blockade." Mira stiffened. Few people mentioned her past deployments. Fewer still knew the details of what had happened at Vega. She studied him with renewed interest, noting the faint scar along his jawline, a reminder of the day he'd pulled 2 miners from a collapsed shaft, while toxic gas filled his lungs. Perhaps they were both shaped by their scars. Her comm unit chirped. Lieutenant Larson's gruff voice cut through the moment. "Commander, convoys prepped. VIP transport leaves in 20. "Copy that, Rook," she replied, using his field nickname, "On my way." Jonas stepped back as she gathered her tactical gear. Another escort mission. Some off-world dignitary touring the resource operations. Apparently, he's invested heavily in our little corner of hell. Mira checked her pulse rifle. The motion automatic after countless inspections should be routine. "In my experience, Commander," Jonas said with a wry smile, "nothing on Pyra 9 stays routine for long." She allowed herself a brief chuckle. "Keep your head down, Doctor. That firestorm looks closer than your readings might suggest." His expression softened. "I always do. And Mira," he caught himself, reverting to formality. "Commander, stay safe out there." She nodded once, sharply, unwilling to acknowledge the warmth his concern kindled. Attachments were dangerous in a place where the ground could literally open and swallow you whole. Still, as she strode toward the transport bay, she found herself wondering what it would be like to hear him call her by her first name again. The security team waited at attention by the armored rover, 6 of her best, plus Rook. Among them stood a civilian liaison, a local girl barely into her teens, who served as a translator for the mining clans that worked the deeper shafts. The child's name was Elise, her skin permanently stained yellow from sulfur exposure. "Convoy status?" Mira asked, performing a final weapons check. Rook handed her a datapad. 3 vehicles, VIP in the center. We're taking the front rover with the advance team. Rear guard is already in position. The dignitary's identity? General Rex Vore, former military strategist, now private defense contractor. Rook's expression darkened. Got a reputation for playing both sides of the Outer Rim conflicts. Mira frowned. Lovely. Just what we need. Another vulture circling our operation. The convoy rolled out under twin moons. Their pale light diffused through the ever-present haze of sulfuric compounds. Mira took point position, scanning the craggy ridgelines that flanked the transit route. Pyra 9's terrain was treacherous. Thermal vents could erupt without warning, spewing superheated gas across the lunar surface. They were halfway to the main mining complex when her instincts screamed danger. Something about the rock formations ahead seemed wrong, too symmetrical, too convenient as cover. "Rook," she said quietly into her comm. "I'm reading unusual heat signatures at 2 o'clock. Run a spectral analysis." "Already on it. Getting some weird feedback." His voice cut off as a brilliant flash of blue-white energy erupted from the ridge. The rear rover exploded, fragments of composite armor raining down across the caustic landscape. Before Mira could shout orders, a second blast struck their vehicle. The world tilted sideways as the rover flipped, throwing her against the reinforced viewport. Darkness swallowed her consciousness. When she came to, the taste of blood filled her mouth. Disoriented, she dragged herself from the wreckage, her combat armor's servos whining in protest. The scene that greeted her was one of carnage, the convoy reduced to smoldering husks, bodies scattered across volcanic rock. "Rook!" she called, activating her helmet's emergency beacon. "Squad, report!" Only static answered. Through the smoke, she spotted movement, a figure in iridescent battle armor approaching the central rover. The stranger moved with predatory grace, each step deliberate as he surveyed his handiwork, even from a distance. Mira could see the insignia on his shoulder plates, a stylized flame consuming a planet. She raised her rifle, but her targeting systems were fried. The shot went wide, alerting the attacker to her presence. He turned slowly, his helmet retracting to reveal a face divided by a cybernetic implant that covered his left eye and temple. A cruel smile twisted his features as he raised a weapon unlike anything Mira had ever seen, a compact cannon that pulsed with contained plasma. "Commander Tal," he called, voice carrying easily across the desolate terrain. "I was hoping you'd survive the initial salvo. It would be disappointing to eliminate Pyra 9's legendary protector without proper introduction." Mira took cover behind a boulder, mind racing through tactical options. None looked promising. "General Vore, I presume, your idea of a greeting needs work." His laughter was cold, mechanical. "Consider it a demonstration of what happens to those who stand in my way." He gestured toward the bodies of her squad. "Your people died quickly, a courtesy I extend as professional respect." "You'll pay for this," she growled, calculating the distance to his position. Empty threats from a commander with no command. Rakes aimed his weapon at the central rover. "I've obtained what I came for, until our next encounter, Commander." A final blast from his weapon melted through the rover's armor plating. Then, with unsettling swiftness, he activated a personal transport field and vanished in a column of light, extracted by a ship hidden in the turbulent atmosphere above. Mira spent the next hour searching desperately for survivors. She found only one, the child liaison, Elise, half buried under debris, her breathing shallow. "Commander," the girl whispered as Mira cradled her broken body. He said, "He wants your fire, the weapon. It hungers for worthy adversaries." "Save your strength," Mira urged, activating a medical stabilizer. "Help is coming." But the girl's eyes were already growing distant. The scientist, the one who watches the storms, he knows his work. The general. Her voice faded as consciousness slipped away. Mira stared at the child's still form, ice crystallizing around her heart. Jonas, the weapon's energy signature, the unusual plasma configuration. It matched the experimental engine design he'd been developing. A cold suspicion bloomed. Had Jonas betrayed them, provided Rakes with technology that had massacred her people? She stood slowly, rage and grief warring within her as a firestorm gathered on the horizon. If Jonas was involved, there would be a reckoning. But first, she needed answers, and then she would have vengeance. The emergency response team found her standing amid the wreckage, her face set in lines of granite determination, watching as the firestorm consumed all evidence of the attack. The debriefing room at Outpost Delta hummed with tension. Colony Director Vega paced before the holographic display showing the attack site, now a blackened scar across the lunar surface. All dead. An entire security detail wiped out. The director's voice trembled with barely contained fury. And you're telling me this was no accident? That General Vore orchestrated this massacre? Mira stood at attention, her posture rigid despite the medical drone hovering at her shoulder, attempting to treat a laceration along her temple. I saw him, sir. He acknowledged me by name before he departed. And the weapon? You're certain about its configuration? Plasma-based. Unlike standard military issue, the energy signature was distinctive. She hesitated, the words bitter on her tongue. It matched the theoretical output of Dr. Wu's experimental drive system. The director's gaze sharpened. Are you accusing one of our leading scientists of collusion with a warlord? I'm stating facts. Sir, the correlation requires investigation. Agreed. We'll bring him in for questioning immediately. Mira stepped forward. With respect, Director, I'd like to handle this personally. A moment of calculation passed across Vega's features before he nodded. Very well, Commander. But remember, we need answers more than we need retribution. Clear? Crystal, sir. She found Jonas in his laboratory, surrounded by holographic models of Pyra 9's atmospheric conditions. He looked up as she entered, relief washing over his features. Mira, I heard about the attack. He moved toward her, hands outstretched, then froze as she raised her sidearm. Don't move, Doctor. Her voice was glacial, unrecognizable even to her own ears. Confusion and hurt flashed across his face. What's happening? Your plasma configuration, the weapon that killed my squad. It was your design. She stepped closer, the barrel of her gun unwavering. Explain. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by horror. No, that's impossible. I saw it with my own eyes. Blue-white plasma contained in a focused beam. Your signature breakthrough. Jonas paled, gripping the edge of his workstation for support. Mira, listen to me. 3 months ago, there was a breach in the research database. Some of my prototype designs were accessed. I reported it, but security deemed it a low-level incursion. His voice cracked. I never thought it would be weaponized. She wanted to disbelieve him, to channel her grief into rage against a concrete target, but the raw anguish in his eyes couldn't be fabricated. Slowly, she lowered her weapon. Those people, Jonas whispered, your squad, they died because of my work? They died because of Reich's Vore, she corrected, holstering her gun. But I need to know everything about that technology, how it works, its vulnerabilities. He nodded, straightening with newfound resolve. I'll tell you everything I know, and then I'm coming with you. Coming where? To stop him. This is my responsibility too. Mira shook her head. This isn't your fight, Doctor. It became my fight when he stole my research. Jonas met her gaze steadily. I know that weapon's weaknesses better than anyone. You need me. Before she could argue further, her comm unit activated. Rook's voice came through, strained but unmistakable. Commander, I'm alive, barely. Med Bay. Need to talk. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Rook's alive, she breathed, already moving toward the door. Jonas followed. I'm still coming with you. This time she didn't object. Lieutenant Rook Larson lay in the medical pod, his torso wrapped in regenerative bandages that pulsed with bioelectric current. His weathered face was ashen beneath his perpetual stubble, but his eyes brightened as Mira approached. Thought you were gone, she said quietly, gripping his outstretched hand. Takes more than a fancy light show to put me down. He winced as he shifted position, found me half buried under the rover, punctured lung, shattered femur, good times. Mira glanced at the medical readout. The injuries were severe but not life-threatening with Pyra 9's advanced medical technology. What happened out there? How did he ambush us so completely? Rook's expression darkened. Someone leaked our route, Commander. The attack was too precisely timed, too well coordinated. We have a traitor. Looks that way. His gaze shifted to Jonas, who stood awkwardly near the door. No offense, Doctor, but why is he here? The weapon Vor used. It's based on Dr. Wu's research. He's helping us understand what we're up against. Rook grunted, unconvinced. Convenient timing for a conscience. Jonas stepped forward. Lieutenant, I understand your suspicion, but I swear to you, I had no knowledge of how my work was being used, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. A tense silence stretched between them until Rook finally nodded. Fair enough, but keep this in mind, Doctor, if I catch even a whiff of deception from you, plasma weapon or no, I'll snap your neck myself. Noted, Jonas replied, admirably steady. Mira turned back to Rook. I need you to heal. When you're back on your feet, I want you coordinating our defense. If Vor attacked once, he might come back to finish the job. And what will you be doing? She checked her tactical belt, ensuring her sidearm was secure. Hunting. We need to trace the weapon's components. Find out who helped Vor acquire it. Start with Kavos, Rook suggested. That smuggler who runs the equipment depot near the southern mines. If anyone's moving black market tech on Pyra 9, he'll know about it. Mira nodded. Rest up, Lieutenant. That's an order. As they left the med bay, Jonas matched his stride to hers. You don't have to do this alone, you know. I work better alone. That's not true. You had a squad for a reason. When she didn't respond, he continued. I've studied Pyra 9's black markets as part of my resource allocation research. I know the players, the territories. She stopped, turning to face him. Why are you pushing this? You're a scientist, not a soldier. Because 8 people are dead because of something I created. His voice was quiet but firm. And because I care what happens to you, Mira. The admission hung between them, too honest to dismiss. She remembered how he'd looked at her on the observation deck, how something had stirred within her, something she'd ruthlessly suppressed. Fine, she conceded, but you follow my lead. If I say run, you run. Clear? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Clear, Commander. The southern mining complex sprawled across a plateau of solidified magma, its massive drills boring into the moon's crust to extract rare minerals. Workers moved through the facility in environment suits, their forms distorted by heat haze rising from thermal vents. Mira and Jonas approached on a utility skimmer, both dressed in nondescript mining coveralls. She'd left her commander's insignia behind. Along with any obvious military equipment, her sidearm was concealed beneath the loose fabric of her suit. Kavos operates out of the old processing shed, Jonas murmured, pointing toward a corrugated structure at the complex's edge. He bribes the foreman to look the other way while he deals in unauthorized tech upgrades for the miners. How exactly does a xenopsychologist know so much about local criminals? Mira asked, guiding the skimmer into a maintenance bay. Jonas shrugged. I talk to people. Unlike some military personnel, I don't intimidate everyone I meet. I don't intimidate everyone, she protested. He raised an eyebrow. Just most people, she amended with the faintest smile. The processing shed stank of sulfur compounds and machine oil. Workers huddled in groups, exchanging credits for small packages or whispering in corners. All conversation ceased when Mira and Jonas entered, suspicious gazes tracking their movement. A heavily augmented man sat at the far end, his left arm replaced entirely with a mechanical appendage that ended in specialized mining tools. His weathered face bore the yellow staining of long-term sulfur exposure. This had to be Kavos. We need information, Mira stated without preamble, stopping before his makeshift desk. Kavos sized her up with cybernetically enhanced eyes. Information costs. What's your interest? Stranger? Plasma weapons. specifically ones utilizing experimental containment fields. The smuggler's expression remained neutral, but his mechanical arm whirred softly, a tell of increased alertness. Don't deal in weapons, against company policy. His gaze flicked to Jonas. You look familiar. I consult on efficiency protocols for the northern operations, Jonas replied smoothly. Right, the Storm Watcher. Kavos leaned back. Still don't know anything about weapons. Mira placed a credit chip on the desk. Try harder. The smuggler pocketed the chip without looking at it. Heard whispers. Someone moved specialized components through Pyra 9 about 6 weeks ago. Electromagnetic accelerators, plasma containment fields, high-end stuff. Who? Courier called himself Malik. Worked for a private security firm, the kind that's military in everything but name. Jonas tensed beside her. Did he mention who the end client was? Nah, but he paid in Centaurian platinum. That narrows it down to Outer Rim operations. Kavos's mechanical fingers drummed a nervous pattern. Look, asking about this stuff is dangerous. There's been corporate types sniffing around since the convoy hit. Big money involved. Mira leaned forward. What convoy hit? Kavos's eyes widened fractionally before he controlled his expression. Did I say convoy? Meant shipment. Yeah, shipment got delayed, is all. You knew about the attack. Mira's hand drifted toward her concealed weapon. Who else knew? The atmosphere in the shed shifted. Workers began moving toward the exits while others closed in behind them. Kavos smiled thinly. Think you should leave now. We're not finished. Yeah, you are. He activated his arm's mining drill, the ceramic bit whirring to life. Unless you want to experience firsthand what this does to human bone. Jonas stepped forward, his voice pitched low. The firestorm that struck the northern quadrant last month, remember it? Killed 17 miners when their shelter collapsed. Kavos frowned. What about it? It wasn't natural. It was a test run for the same technology that destroyed that convoy. And there'll be more. Jonas pulled up a holographic projection from his wrist device, atmospheric data showing abnormal energy patterns. The next one will hit here. Your operation, your people. The smuggler studied the projection, his confidence wavering. You're bluffing. I track storm formations. It's my job to know. Jonas manipulated the hologram, showing predictive models. 48 hours, maximum, unless we stop the man responsible. Kavos deactivated his drill, scowling. Fine. Malik mentioned a research station, underwater facility in the western Sulphur Sea. Real, hush-hush. Supposedly studying thermal vents, but nobody believes that. Coordinates? Mira demanded. Don't have exact ones, but there's a supply submarine that makes runs from the western port, unmarked. Leaves every third day at dusk. He fixed them with a hard stare. Now we're even. Get out and don't come back. Outside, as they hurried toward their skimmer, Mira gave Jonas an appraising look. That storm projection, was it real? The data was real, he replied carefully. The interpretation was creative. A surprised laugh escaped her. You bluffed a hardened criminal with science. Sometimes the most effective weapon is the right information, delivered confidently. His eyes met hers. I'm not completely useless in the field, Commander. I never said you were. You thought it. She couldn't deny it. I'm recalibrating my assessment. The ghost of a smile touched his lips again. High praise indeed. As they climbed aboard the skimmer, an explosion rocked the mining complex behind them. Mira instinctively pushed Jonas down, shielding him as debris rained around them. Through the smoke, armored figures advanced, mercenaries in matching black exoskeletons, carrying military-grade weapons. Rakes' men, she hissed, drawing her sidearm. He's tying up loose ends. Or he knows we're looking for him, Jonas countered, eyes wide. The skimmer's engine whined as Mira gunned it toward the exit ramp. Either way, we need to move. Western Port, now. Behind them, the processing shed erupted in flames. The Western Port facility clung to the edge of a vast sulfur sea, its industrial silhouette stark against the churning yellow-orange waters. Toxic mist rose from the liquid surface, requiring all personnel to wear respirator masks when working the docks. Mira and Jonas had abandoned their damaged skimmer 5 kilometers back, continuing on foot to avoid detection. They crouched now behind a stack of cargo containers, observing the submarine bay through tactical binoculars. There, Jonas pointed to a sleek vessel unlike the bulky mining subs. That's our transport, military grade, stealth capable. Mira studied the craft. Too well guarded for a frontal approach. We need a distraction. Or we need to be on something they're expecting, Jonas suggested, nodding toward a loading crane transferring supply crates to the submarine's cargo hold. She followed his gaze, quickly understanding. The supply manifest. Can you hack it? He was already accessing a terminal on the container beside them. Give me 2 minutes. While Jonas worked, Mira surveyed their opposition. 6 guards in light combat armor, carrying pulse rifles. Standard security. Nothing like the elite forces that had attacked the mining complex. This wasn't Rakes' primary base of operations, just a waypoint. Done, Jonas announced. I've added 2 crates to the manifest. They'll be loaded last, which gives us about 10 minutes to get inside them. Mira nodded, impressed despite herself. Let's move. They slipped between shadows, timing their movements with the loading operations. The empty crates stood ready on the dock, awaiting inspection before being sealed. Mira disabled the tracking chips while Jonas rigged the internal locks to open from inside. These are pressurized for underwater transport, he explained. We'll have air, but it'll be tight. I've been in tighter spots, she replied, checking her weapon one final time. Jonas paused, his hand brushing hers for a moment. Mira, if something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, his eyes held hers, earnest in the dim light. I want you to know that meeting you has been the one bright spot in this hellscape of a moon. The unexpected confession caught her off guard. Before she could formulate a response, the dock alarm sounded. Shift change. They had to move now. Tell me again when we've stopped Rakes, she said, squeezing his hand briefly before climbing into her crate. The journey underwater was claustrophobic darkness, punctuated by the submarine's movements as it descended into the sulfur sea. Mira counted seconds in her head, keeping track of time while regulating her breathing in the confined space. After what felt like hours, she felt the vessel dock with a gentle shudder. The crate jostled as it was unloaded. She heard muffled voices, then silence. Slowly, she activated the internal release mechanism, raising the lid just enough to peek through. A cavernous loading bay stretched before her, carved directly into the seabed and reinforced with transparent alloy that revealed the murky waters beyond. Workers in lab uniforms moved between stacks of equipment, none paying attention to the newly arrived crates. She tapped a coded sequence on the side of her container, 3 short, 2 long, signaling Jonas. Moments later, they both emerged, quickly ducking behind larger cargo containers. We need lab coats, she whispered, eyeing the staff. Jonas pointed to a supply closet near the bay entrance. They moved silently across the chamber, retrieving white coats and identification badges from unattended hooks. Keep your head down, Mira instructed as they walked through the main corridor, mimicking the purposeful stride of the facility's scientists. Act like you belong until we locate the primary research area. The underwater station was larger than she'd anticipated, with multiple levels extending deeper into the seabed. Holographic signs indicated various research wings, thermal studies, marine biology, atmospheric modeling, Nothing overtly suspicious. "This looks legitimate," Jonas murmured, scanning the facility layout on a wall terminal. "Standard research protocols, proper safety measures. Perfect cover." Mira studied the security patterns, noting cameras and guard postings. There must be a restricted area, something off the main grid. They continued deeper, passing labs where scientists analyzed samples or monitored equipment. None gave them more than a passing glance, the anonymity of the white coat proving effective camouflage. On the third level down, they encountered a security checkpoint guarding a reinforced door marked simply Project Prometheus. 2 armed guards flanked a biometric scanner. "That's it," Mira whispered, pulling Jonas into an alcove. "But we can't get past that scanner without authorized biometrics." Jonas frowned, thinking, maybe we don't need to. He pointed to an environmental control panel nearby. "The life support systems for each section run independently. If I trigger an emergency protocol in this area, the guards would be forced to respond," Mira finished, catching his train of thought. "Do it." With subtle movements, Jonas accessed the panel, initiating what appeared to be a routine diagnostic. His fingers flew across the interface, bypassing security protocols with practiced ease. "Ready," he murmured. 3, 2, 1. Alarms blared as oxygen levels in the adjacent corridor plummeted. Red warning lights flashed, and the guards immediately moved to investigate, leaving their post momentarily vacant. They slipped through the checkpoint, Jonas using the distraction to override the door lock with an emergency medical override code. The reinforced door slid open, revealing a darkened laboratory beyond. Inside, blue light pulsed from massive containment tanks that lined the walls. Each held swirling plasma, concentrated into ever-shifting patterns that resembled miniature firestorms. Workstations displayed complex simulations of Pyra 9's atmosphere, highlighting thermal weak points. "This is it," Jonas breathed, moving to the nearest console. "They're not just weaponizing my engine design, they're using it to manipulate the firestorms." Mira examined a holographic map of the moon, where red indicators marked targeted locations. Mining operations, population centers, defense installations. They're planning to hit everything at once. A coordinated attack using the planet itself as a weapon. Jonas's face paled as he scrolled through data files. The casualties would be catastrophic. A mechanical whir drew their attention to the far end of the lab, where a reinforced door slid open. They ducked behind equipment as voices approached. The field tests exceeded expectations. A crisp female voice stated, "The amplification factor was 347% higher than projected. General Vore is quite pleased." "The targeting system still needs calibration," a male voice responded. "We lost precision at the outer range." "That won't matter when we deploy at scale. Precision becomes irrelevant when the target area covers an entire settlement." The speakers came into view. A woman in a military-style uniform and a man in a scientist's coat, both studying data on a tablet. Neither had noticed the intruders yet. Mira signaled to Jonas to remain hidden while she slipped around the perimeter, positioning herself behind the pair. In one fluid motion, she emerged, weapon drawn. "Don't move," she ordered, voice deadly calm. The woman froze, slowly raising her hands. The scientist wasn't as disciplined. He spun around, reaching for an alarm panel. Mira's stun blast caught him mid-turn, dropping him unconscious to the floor. "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vex," the woman said without turning. "And you must be the famous Commander Tal. General Vore mentioned you survived." "Where is he?" Mira demanded, keeping her weapon trained on Vex's back. "Not here. He visits to review progress, nothing more." A cold smile curved Vex's lips. "He'll be disappointed to miss you." Jonas emerged from hiding, moving to the central console. "I'm downloading their research data. We need to understand exactly how they're triggering the firestorms. Vex's eyes narrowed as she recognized him. Dr. Wu, your contribution to Project Prometheus has been invaluable. A pity you never saw its true potential. This isn't potential, he replied, disgust evident in his voice. It's perversion of science for mass destruction. It's evolution, power shifting to those with vision. Vex's gaze returned to Mira. You're too late, Commander. The primary generators are already deployed. In 24 hours, Pyra 9 will burn. A sudden tremor shook the facility, causing equipment to rattle. Alarm klaxons activated throughout the lab. What was that? Mira demanded. Vex's smile widened. That would be the neural network activating. A defense mechanism, if you will. The room's lighting shifted to a pulsing red as holographic interfaces initiated emergency protocols. On screens around the lab, warning messages flashed. Neural security breach. Countermeasures engaged. What did you do? Jonas moved quickly between workstations, trying to override the system. I didn't do anything, Vex replied calmly. The facility did. It sensed unauthorized access and is protecting itself. The neural net is proactive in its defense. As if on cue, the air shimmered with an almost imperceptible distortion. Mira felt a strange pressure building behind her eyes, followed by whispers that seemed to emanate from within her own mind. Jonas, she called, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. Something's wrong. He looked up, alarmed by her tone. Mira, what is it? The lab began to warp around her, surfaces rippling like disturbed water. The containment tanks of plasma stretched and contorted, their blue light intensifying until it was almost blinding. Neural hallucinogens, Vex explained, still unnaturally calm. The security system releases compounds that interact with intruders' brain chemistry. Quite disorienting, I'm told. Mira struggled to maintain her focus, but reality continued to fracture. She saw her fallen squad members standing among the lab equipment, their bodies charred and broken, eyes accusing. Rook appeared before her, his chest a gaping wound. You left, the apparition whispered. You survived while we died. Not real, she muttered, gripping her weapon tighter. Fight it. Jonas had abandoned the console and rushed to her side, his own movements becoming unsteady as the hallucinogens affected him too. Mira, listen to my voice. It's a chemical attack. We need to activate our environmental filters. She nodded, fumbling for the emergency button on her suit collar. The specialized filters built into their mining disguises would help, though not completely neutralize the effect. Taking advantage of their disorientation, Vex lunged for a nearby weapon. Mira, despite her compromised state, tracked the movement and fired. The stun blast caught Vex in the shoulder, sending her sprawling. The data, Jonas gasped, fighting through his own hallucinations. We need to complete the download. They staggered back to the console, where progress indicators showed the transfer at 68%. Around them, the facility's alarms continued to blare, and the neural effect intensified. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with lifelike rhythm. We can't wait, Mira decided, retrieving a portable drive from the console. This will have to be enough. We need to find the generator locations and warn the colony. As they turned to leave, a section of the laboratory wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, strapped to a medical table, lay a woman in a tattered mining uniform. Her eyes fluttered open as the door opened, revealing confusion and terror. Help, she croaked, voice barely audible over the alarms. Jonas moved toward her immediately. She's alive. Mira followed, covering him as he examined the restraints. Who are you? She asked the prisoner. Sergeant Lena Ortega, explosives specialist. The woman's voice strengthened slightly. Call sign Sparks. Colony Defense Force. Your military? Mira helped unfasten the restraints while Jonas checked vital signs. Undercover, investigating resource theft when I stumbled on this place. Sparks winced as circulation returned to her limbs. They've been experimenting on me, testing how the neural net affects different subjects. Can you walk? Jonas asked, supporting her as she sat up. Give me a minute and a weapon, and I can do a hell of a lot more than walk. Despite her weakened state, determination burned in Sparks' eyes. They're planning something big, a coordinated firestorm attack across the entire moon. We know, Mira replied. That's why we need to get this data back to the colony. A new tremor, stronger than before, shook the facility. Warning lights intensified as a computerized voice announced, "Critical breach detected. Emergency protocols engaged. Facility purge imminent." That's our cue to leave, Jonas said, helping Sparks to her feet. They moved through the laboratory toward the exit, Mira leading with her weapon ready. The neural hallucinogens still affected their perception, making the corridor ahead warp and shift unpredictably. Twice she fired at shadows that materialized into threats only she could see. Stay focused, she ordered, as much to herself as to the others. The submarine bay, that's our extraction point. Facility personnel rushed through intersecting corridors, evacuating as the purge countdown continued. In the chaos, 3 guards spotted them and opened fire. Mira pushed Jonas and Sparks behind a structural column, returning fire with precision despite her compromised senses. We're not going to make it to the sub-bay, Sparks gasped, her strength already waning. There's another way out. Maintenance shaft that leads to an emergency surface pod. I mapped it when they brought me in. Where? Mira demanded, ducking as energy bolts struck the column. 2 levels up, eastern quadrant. Sparks gestured weakly, but we'll need to override the lockdown. Jonas pulled a small device from his pocket, a hacking tool disguised as standard research equipment. I can handle that. They fought their way through the facility, the hallucinations gradually fading as their filters processed the neural agents. The maintenance shaft was where Sparks had indicated, sealed with a security barrier that Jonas quickly bypassed. The narrow passage led upward through the facility's infrastructure, eventually opening into a small chamber containing a spherical escape pod. As Jonas initiated the launch sequence, another violent tremor shook the station. The purge sequence is destabilizing the structural integrity, he explained, working frantically at the controls. This whole place is going to collapse. The pod's systems came online, its hatch opening with a pneumatic hiss. They crowded inside, securing themselves in the cramped space as emergency lights bathed them in red. Hang on, Jonas warned, activating the launch protocol. This won't be gentle. The pod rocketed upward through a vertical shaft, the G-forces pressing them into their seats. Behind them, explosions rippled through the underwater facility as its self-destruct sequence engaged. They broke the surface of the sulfur sea with a tremendous splash, the pod's momentum carrying them several meters into the air before splashing down again. Stabilizers deployed automatically, keeping them afloat as they drifted on the toxic currents. Inside, Mira checked Sparks' condition while Jonas accessed the pod's communication system. Her pulse is weak. We need to get her to medical. Emergency beacon activated, Jonas reported. If anyone's listening, they'll find us. Through the pod's viewport, they watched as bubbles erupted across the sulfur sea's surface, the last gasps of the research facility collapsing beneath them. The horizon glowed with the approaching dawn, casting copper light across the desolate landscape. We have the data, Mira said, clutching the drive containing the stolen research. Now we just need to find those generators before Rakes activates them. Sparks stirred, her eyes opening slightly. Not generators, she murmured. Resonators. They amplify natural energy patterns, creating feedback loops in the atmosphere. Jonas frowned. Of course, that's brilliant and terrifying. They're not creating the firestorms, they're enhancing existing weather patterns, pushing them past critical thresholds. How many? Mira asked. The 3. Sparks struggled to stay conscious. Primary installation is at the northern volcanic ridge, the place the miners call Devil's Spine. Mira knew the location, a treacherous formation of obsidian spires where sulfur vents created perpetual flames, the perfect cover for Rakes' operation. A crackling sound drew their attention to the communication system. Through static, a familiar voice emerged. Emergency response deployed. Commander Tal, do you copy? Rook's voice, somehow against orders, he'd gotten himself out of the medical bay and into the command center. Copy. Lieutenant, Mira responded, relief washing through her. We have critical intelligence and need immediate extraction. 1 wounded. Triangulating your position now. A pause. Commander, there's something else. We're detecting massive energy buildups across the moon's surface. Something's happening to the firestorms. She exchanged a grim look with Jonas. It's starting. Rakes is making his move. The recovery shuttle arrived within 20 minutes, hovering above the escape pod as a winch system connected the 2 vessels. As they were lifted from the toxic sea, Mira caught sight of the horizon, where unnatural storm clouds gathered in spiral formations unlike anything she'd seen before. Back at Outpost Delta, the command center had been transformed into a crisis hub. Holographic displays showed the advancing firestorms, their patterns clearly manipulated into targeted trajectories that threatened the colony's primary installations. Rook greeted them as they entered, his body still showing signs of injury but his determination undiminished. Commander, Doctor, he nodded to Sparks, who had been rushed to medical. Glad you made it back. Wish I had better news. How bad? Mira asked, studying the tactical displays. We've got 3 major firestorms forming, all converging on population centers. Atmospheric conditions are off the charts. Wind velocities and thermal readings that shouldn't be naturally possible. He gestured to a secondary display showing evacuation protocols. We've started moving people to the emergency bunkers, but there's not enough room for everyone. Jonas connected the stolen data drive to the main system. I need to analyze what we recovered. There might be a way to disrupt the resonators. Do it, Mira ordered. Rook, give me a status report on our defensive capabilities. Limited. Most of our heavy equipment is still deployed at the mining sites. We've got 2 tactical shuttles with weapon systems and about 30 security personnel with combat training. Not enough. Not nearly enough to face what was coming, but Mira had overcome worse odds. We split into teams, she decided, 1 for each resonator. Hit them simultaneously before the storms reach critical mass. Rook frowned. That's spreading our forces dangerously thin. We don't have a choice. Once those firestorms combine, nothing on this moon will survive. Jonas looked up from the data analysis, his expression grim but determined. I think I've found something. The resonators operate on a synchronized frequency. If we could disrupt that synchronization, even briefly, it might destabilize the entire network. How do we do that? Mira asked. We'd need to recalibrate 1 resonator to broadcast an interference pattern. He manipulated the holographic model, demonstrating the concept. It wouldn't stop the storms completely, but it would prevent them from combining into a single catastrophic event. So we target the primary installation at Devil's Spine, Mira concluded. That's where I'm going. Not alone, Jonas insisted. You need me to recalibrate the resonator. And you need explosive support, came a voice from the doorway. Sparks stood there, leaning heavily on a medical drone but looking considerably improved. No one touches my equipment without me. Rook shook his head. You're in no condition for field operations, Sergeant. With respect, Lieutenant, stick it up your exhaust port. Sparks stepped forward, determination overriding her physical limitations. "This is my specialty, and I owe these bastards for what they did to me." Mira assessed the situation quickly. Time was critical, and Sparks' expertise could mean the difference between success and failure. "Rook, you coordinate the attacks on the secondary resonators. I'll take Dr. Wu and Sergeant Ortega to Devil's Spine." "Commander," Rook began to protest. "That's an order. Lieutenant," her tone brooked no argument. "If we fail, you're Pyra 9's last hope." Reluctantly, he nodded. "Understood, but you better come back, all of you. I'm not breaking in a new commander at my age." The ghost of a smile touched Mira's lips. "Wouldn't dream of inconveniencing you, Rook." As they prepared for departure, Jonas worked feverishly to create a portable device that could reprogramming the resonator. Sparks gathered specialized explosives, designed to function in Pyra 9's volatile atmosphere. Mira checked her tactical gear, ensuring everything was in perfect working order. Just before boarding the shuttle, Jonas pulled her aside. "Mira, there's something you should know. The recalibration. It needs to be done manually, from inside the resonator chamber." She understood the implication immediately, meaning whoever does it will be at the epicenter when the interference pattern hits. He nodded gravely. "The feedback would be intense." "Then I'll do it." "No." His hand closed around hers, firm and unwavering. "This is my technology, my responsibility. I created the basis for these weapons. I should be the one to stop them." Before she could argue, an alert sounded throughout the outpost. On the tactical displays, the firestorms had intensified, their spiral arms reaching toward one another across Pyra 9's scarred surface. "We're out of time," Mira said, making a command decision. "We'll figure it out when we get there. Let's move." The tactical shuttle cut through turbulent skies, buffeted by winds that shouldn't exist on an airless moon, another sign of Rakes's atmospheric manipulation. Through the viewport, they watched in horror as settlements were evacuated, miners and colonists fleeing toward emergency shelters that might not withstand what was coming. Devil's Spine loomed before them, its obsidian spires wreathed in sulfuric flames. At its center, a structure had been erected, sleek and predatory, its architecture unmistakably military. Energy pulses radiated from the installation, visible as rippling distortions in the air. "There's our target," Mira announced, bringing the shuttle around for a better view. "Looks like heavy security." Sparks studied the facility through tactical binoculars. Automated defense turrets, motion sensors, probably subsurface mines too. Standard paranoid warlord package. "Can we disable them?" "The turrets, yes. I've got signal jammers that should work. The rest we'll have to handle the old-fashioned way." Jonas completed final adjustments to his device, a cobbled-together contraption that resembled a portable generator with additional components attached. "Ready on my end. Once we're inside, I'll need about 3 minutes to recalibrate the resonator core." Mira nodded, setting the shuttle down behind a ridge that shielded them from direct observation. "Sparks, take point on the defense systems. I'll clear a path to the central chamber." They moved out, keeping low among the obsidian formations. The heat was oppressive, even through their environmental suits. Overhead, the sky had transformed into a nightmarish canvas of swirling energy patterns, punctuated by lightning that struck the surface with increasing frequency. Sparks deployed her signal jammers with practiced efficiency, creating blind spots in the security grid. They advanced methodically, Mira neutralizing guards with precision shots from her stun weapon. Jonas followed, the recalibration device humming softly as its components warmed up. The facility's main entrance was sealed with a biometric lock, but Sparks made short work of it with a specialized bypass tool. "Military grade, but not especially creative," she muttered as the doors slid open. Inside, the resonator chamber dominated the central space, a massive structure of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields. Workers monitored control stations arranged in concentric circles around the core, where a column of contained plasma rose from floor to ceiling. "Reminds me of your lab models," Mira commented to Jonas. "The same principle, vastly amplified." His expression darkened. "They've created a self-sustaining reaction. The plasma core is drawing energy directly from Pyra 9's thermal vents." A voice rang out across the chamber, amplified and immediately recognizable. "Impressive, isn't it, Commander Tal?" General Ryix, Vor, stood on an elevated platform near the resonator core, his cybernetic implants glowing with the same energy that powered the weapon. He looked pleased, almost amused by their arrival. "I anticipated you might survive long enough to witness my triumph," he continued, "though I confess, I expected you to bring more than a scientist and a half-dead explosives expert." Mira stepped forward, placing herself between Ryix and her companions. "It's over, Vor. We've disabled your other resonators. This is the only one left." A lie, but one she delivered with absolute conviction. Ryx's momentary hesitation suggested it had the desired effect. "A minor setback," he replied, descending from the platform. "This installation alone is sufficient to devastate the primary colony. The damage will be instructive for other worlds considering resistance." As he spoke, facility workers moved to defensive positions, weapons drawn. Mira counted 12, plus Ryix himself. Difficult odds, but not impossible. "Why?" Jonas demanded, genuine anguish in his voice. "Why pervert science this way? These weapons won't just kill people, they'll render entire worlds uninhabitable." Ryix smiled coldly. "That's rather the point, Dr. Wu. Scorched Earth has always been an effective negotiating tactic. When Earth sees what happened to Pyra 9, they'll be far more amenable to my terms." "Earth?" Mira frowned. "This is about Earth?" "Everything is about Earth. Commander, the government that exiled me, the corporations that stole my military innovations, the people who called me a war criminal for seeing the galaxy as it truly is, a battlefield where only the strongest survive." Ryix gestured to the resonator core. "This is merely the first demonstration of what happens to those who stand against me." While he monologued, Mira noticed sparks slipping away, moving behind equipment toward the facility's power regulation systems. Jonas had positioned himself near a control terminal, his recalibration device partially concealed. "Now," Ryix concluded, drawing his plasma weapon, the same one that had slaughtered her squad. "I'm afraid your interference ends here. I'd prefer to keep this quick, out of professional courtesy." Mira's hand moved to her weapon, but she knew she couldn't outdraw him. Instead, she played for time. "Before you kill us, I want to know one thing. Who betrayed us? Who leaked our convoy route?" "Does it matter? The dead are dead." "It matters to me." Ryix seemed to consider this, then shrugged. "Your colony director, Vega, he's been on my payroll for months, feeding me information about security protocols, research developments. Your Dr. Wu's work came to my attention through him." The revelation hit hard, but Mira kept her expression neutral. "Thank you for the confirmation. Rook will be pleased to know who to arrest when this is over." "There won't be an over, Commander. Not for you." Ryix raised his weapon. At that moment, sparks detonated her first charge. The explosion rocked the facility's power grid, plunging the chamber into momentary darkness before emergency systems activated. In the confusion, Mira launched herself at Ryix, tackling him before he could fire. They crashed to the floor, the plasma weapon skittering away. Ryix was stronger than his lean frame suggested, enhanced by cybernetic implants that gave him unnatural speed. He threw Mira off, sending her sliding across the polished floor. Around them, chaos erupted as Jonas made for the resonator controls, and Sparks continued her sabotage of the facility systems. Guards fired wildly in the fluctuating light, their shots going wide as the structure shook with secondary explosions. Mira regained her footing as Rakes retrieved his weapon. She dodged the first plasma blast, which melted through a control panel behind her. The second shot grazed her environmental suit, searing through the outer layer to the skin beneath. Pain lanced through her side, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the fight. "Jonas, now!" she shouted, diving behind a structural column for cover. He had reached the resonator controls, connecting his device to the main interface. "I need more time. The system's fighting me." Rakes fired again, the plasma blast so close that Mira felt her hair singe. "You have no time left, Commander. None of you do." Through the facility's viewport, she could see the firestorms converging, their destructive power visible even from this distance. Colonial evacuation shuttles fled desperately toward orbit, but many wouldn't make it. Thousands would die if they failed here. Sparks appeared on a catwalk above, her hands full of improvised explosives. "Hey, General, catch!" She hurled the devices toward the facility's structural supports, the resulting explosion sending Rakes and his men scrambling for cover. Mira used the distraction to close the distance, engaging Rakes in hand-to-hand combat. His cybernetic enhancements gave him an edge in strength, but her fury and training made her the more skilled fighter. They exchanged blows across the chamber, each seeking an opening, a weakness to exploit. "I've almost got it," Jonas called, his fingers flying across the controls. "The interference pattern is loading, but the core needs to be manually activated." Rakes landed a punishing blow to Mira's midsection, sending her staggering backward. "Your efforts are futile," he snarled. "The resonance has reached critical threshold. Nothing can stop the convergence now." As if to emphasize his point, the facility shuddered as a firestorm passed directly overhead, its energy interacting with the resonator to create cascading power surges throughout the chamber. Mira saw Jonas looking at the resonator core, then back at her, a decision forming in his eyes. She recognized his intent immediately. "Jonas, don't!" But he had already moved, abandoning the control terminal to sprint toward the core itself. The plasma column pulsed with increasing intensity, its energy field visibly unstable. "The manual override is inside the containment field," he shouted over the facility's alarms. "Someone has to activate it directly." "You'll die." Mira fought her way toward him, desperation lending her strength as she knocked aside one of Rakes's guards. Jonas paused at the edge of the containment field, the energy making his hair stand on end. "Remember what you said about fire, Mira, how it forges the strongest bonds?" A sad smile crossed his features. "Some fires are worth burning for." Before she could reach him, Jonas stepped into the field, his body immediately enveloped in crackling energy. Pain contorted his features, but his hands remained steady as he manipulated the core's direct controls. "Interference pattern engaged," he gasped, each word clearly agony. "Redirecting resonator output." The chamber filled with blinding light as the resonator's energy signature changed, the plasma core shifting from blue-white to a pulsing crimson. Outside, the converging firestorms faltered, their synchronized patterns disrupted by the new signal. Rakes roared in fury, charging toward the core. "Stop him! Kill them all!" Mira intercepted him, channeling all her grief and rage into a devastating series of strikes. Her final blow caught him squarely in the cybernetic implant, shattering the interface between machine and flesh. Rakes howled in pain, staggering backward. In the resonator field, Jonas completed the final adjustments before collapsing to his knees, his body racked with energy discharges. The interference pattern strengthened, sending pulses of disruptive energy outward through Pyra 9's atmosphere. Sparks appeared beside Mira, blood streaming from a wound on her forehead, but determination undimmed. "It's working. The storms are breaking apart." She thrust a detonator into Mira's hand. I've rigged charges throughout the facility. One push, and this whole place goes up, resonator included. Mira's gaze remained fixed on Jonas, still somehow conscious despite the energy tearing through him. We need to get him out first. There's no time, Sparks replied, her voice gentle despite the chaos around them. The containment field has him. We try to extract him. The interference pattern collapses. The truth of it hit Mira like a physical blow. Jonas had known this would happen, had chosen this sacrifice to save them all. Their eyes met across the chamber, his filled with pain but also a profound peace. Go, he mouthed, the word barely visible through the energy discharges. Rakes had recovered enough to make a final, desperate lunge for his weapon. Mira intercepted him, their struggle bringing them to the edge of the resonator field. With a surge of strength born from rage and loss, she forced him backward, directly into the energy field beside Jonas. The general's screams echoed throughout the chamber as the plasma energy interacted violently with his cybernetic implants. Unlike Jonas, who had positioned himself carefully within the field, Rakes was caught in its most volatile region. The energy coursed through him, shorting out his enhancements and searing his flesh. "Commander, we need to move," Sparks urged, already heading for the exit. "This whole place is going to collapse." Mira remained frozen, her eyes locked with Jonas's. In that moment, everything else faded. The facility alarms, the guards fleeing in panic, even Rakes's agonized screams. There was only Jonas and the unspoken words between them. "I'll come back for you," she promised, though she knew he couldn't hear her. With one last look, she followed Sparks toward the exit, the detonator clutched in her hand. They fought their way past remaining guards, Mira moving on autopilot, her tactical training taking over where her heart had gone numb. Outside, the skies had transformed. The artificial firestorms were dissipating, their energy dispersing harmlessly into Pyra 9's upper atmosphere. Emergency shuttles hovered nearby, responding to Rook's coordination efforts from the colony. Mira and Sparks reached their own shuttle just as the facility began to collapse under the strain of the redirected energy. From a safe distance, Mira finally pressed the detonator. The explosions rippled through Devil's spine, the resonator facility disappearing in a blinding flash of light and heat. She felt nothing as she watched it burn, not relief at their victory, not satisfaction at Rakes's defeat, only a hollow ache where hope had briefly flowered. "He saved us all," Sparks said quietly beside her, "not just the colony. If those storms had combined, the atmospheric damage would have been irreversible. Pyra 9 would have been uninhabitable within days." Mira nodded, unable to form words around the tightness in her throat. She piloted the shuttle back toward the colony in silence, watching as the unnatural weather patterns continued to dissipate, revealing stars that had been hidden behind the chaos. Rook met them at the landing pad, his face betraying unusual emotion as he counted only 2 returning from the mission. "Dr. Wu." "He didn't make it," Sparks answered when Mira couldn't. The interference pattern required manual activation inside the containment field. Understanding and respect dawned in Rook's eyes. He placed a hand briefly on Mira's shoulder, a rare gesture of comfort from the stoic lieutenant. "We got the other resonators, all 3 teams successful, the colony's safe." Mira nodded mechanically. "Director Vega?" "In custody. He confessed everything when we confronted him with evidence of the financial transfers, trying to bargain for leniency." "He won't get it." Her voice was steel, devoid of emotion. "Not from me." The aftermath unfolded in a blur of debriefings, medical examinations, and damage assessments. Physical injuries healed while deeper wounds remained raw. Mira threw herself into the recovery efforts, overseeing the rebuilding of damaged infrastructure and the strengthening of colony defenses. 2 weeks after the battle at Devil's Spine, She stood once again at the observation deck where she had spoken with Jonas before everything changed. The sulfur seas still boiled, the horizon still glowed with volcanic activity, but something had shifted. The colonists moved with new purpose, united by their brush with annihilation. "Thought I might find you here," Sparks said, joining her at the viewport. The explosives expert had recovered well, though she still walked with a slight limp. "Mind some company?" Mira gestured to the space beside her. They stood in companionable silence, watching as work crews repaired a mining platform in the distance. "They recovered something from the resonator facility," Sparks finally said. "Search team found it yesterday in the debris field." She held out a small object, Jonas's identification badge. The plastic partially melted, but the image still intact. His gentle eyes stared back at Mira, the ghost of a smile on his lips. "Thank you," Mira said, her voice barely audible as she took the badge. "There's something else." Sparks hesitated. "The resonator core, it didn't completely destabilize after the explosion. There's residual energy patterns that match the interference signal Dr. Wu created." Mira frowned. "What does that mean?" "The science team isn't sure, but they've detected anomalies, quantum fluctuations that shouldn't be possible." Sparks chose her next words carefully. "Some think the plasma field might have preserved something of him, not physically, but on an energy level." Hope flared briefly before Mira ruthlessly suppressed it. False comfort was worse than none at all. Scientists and their theories. "Maybe," Sparks shrugged, "or maybe he found a way to leave his mark on Pyra 9 permanently." She pointed to the horizon, where the setting sun cast purple light across the landscape. "They're calling it the Wu pattern, the way the atmosphere refracts light during sunset now. It's different since the resonator incident, more vivid." Mira looked where she pointed, seeing the subtle iridescence that painted the toxic clouds. It did seem different, more structured, almost deliberate in its beauty. "I should go," Sparks said after another moment of silence. "They're promoting me to lieutenant. Apparently saving a moon from fiery destruction looks good on the service record." A genuine smile, small but real, touched Mira's lips. "Congratulations, Lieutenant, you earned it." Alone again. Mira studied the badge in her hand, tracing the outline of Jonas's face with her thumb. She thought of his last words to her, about fire forging the strongest bonds, about some fires being worth burning for. "I'm still here," she said softly to the empty air, "still fighting, still rebuilding." She tucked the badge carefully into her pocket. "And if there's any part of you left in that pattern, I'll be watching the sunset every day." In the distance, work crews raised new structures against the harsh landscape of Pyra 9. Life continued, shaped by loss but not defined by it. Humanity adapting, persevering, finding beauty even in a place that seemed designed to destroy them. Mira Tal straightened her shoulders and turned toward the door. There was work to do, a colony to protect, perhaps someday even a resonator pattern to understand. And when the sun set, painting the sky in colors that hadn't existed before Jonas's sacrifice, she would return to this spot to watch it. Some fires burned forever, after all,